Greetings, dear friends. We continue a week with Larry Johnson and International Unities Club, together with our guests from the United States. Again, I will do that every time. Mr. Larry Johnson, International Analytic, ex-CIA worker, that speaks about the quality about international analysis, and Judge Napolitano, the author of the podcast Judging Freedom. Yes, Judging Freedom in Russian. First of all, my friends, I want to tell you that you're very well known in Russia, if you don't know about that, because of AI, your podcasts. With the difference maybe to 6 to 7 hours, they already are on the Russian internet. The difference is 6-7 hours. Very quick. And I have not researched that, but since I listen to your podcasts approximately from different platforms, and there's still, still time and videos, it looks about 500,000 views that you have, for sure, of each of your podcasts. Maybe more. I just rough estimation. I don't have to really say who you are to the viewers. Everybody remembers the interview together you took from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that interview millions of people watched here. So, my name is Alexander Kazakov. I am a co-chairman of the International People's Unity Club. I'm a political philosopher. I would like to continue the conversation. It would be a new video because people didn't know that just recently, just a couple of minutes ago, we finished the dialogue and conversation with Mrs. Zakharova, Maria Zakharova. It was a fiery dialogue. Definitely, she's like a volcano. She added some fire to us. But I was surprised, and I said that in that coming out of that dialogue, that official representative from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, together with you and with us, spoke about current political agenda. Not about who said what, when, did, this and that, all that summits and conferences. But Maria was speaking about the values. She was speaking about faith. She spoke about patriotism. Myself, I was quite shocked. Though it's my Ministry of Foreign Affairs on our side. And I would like to continue in this our dialogue that we're going to have now, and together with what Maria said, it's very important to continue. We know very well, as analytics, what divides us. More than that, I will cite what Mr. Lavrov said, that never national interest of Russia and the United States will never get along, over than 50%. And that's normal. That's a political reality. It's all very normal. But at the same time, nevertheless, maybe today, in this conditions of high pressure in an international world, maybe we should start speaking about what unites us, what we have the same, and these values in Russia. For example, the whole history with MAGA is like, good job. It's just great guys.
This is very American.
And this is what we do in Russia too. And I want each one of you to speak what really unites us, as each one of you thinks yesterday, today, day before yesterday, what we as Russians and Americans are alike. Before we states and ultra-liberals start to divide us.
Okay.
Larry, a word to you.
Well, let me start with, I don't know if you're familiar with a movie from the 60s by Paul Newman. It was called Cool Hand Luke. And then it became an iconic line. What we have here is a failure to communicate. So what we have is a failure to communicate. The commonalities that I see between the Russian people and the American people, first and foremost, that foundation of faith, religious faith. The embrace of traditional family values. Unfortunately, right now in the United States, there is a movement away from that. That's why I believe that Russia actually has something to teach the United States. But when it comes to international affairs, there is a great divide because the American people have not suffered what the Russian people did. And so let me ask you a question. In the Great Patriotic War, did you have any relatives that were killed or participated in the Great Patriotic War?
Конечно, много.
Of course, and many.
Okay. And
Это в каждой семье в России.
yeah, and we had,
And like that, every family in Russia.
so Judge and I were with, we were with Konstantin Malofiev and the rector of the school that Konstantin supports, and two other Russians. And we asked that same question that day. This was in March. And everyone raised a hand. Everyone had lost a family member. So, you know, whether it was grandfather, grandmother, uncle, every Russian had a personal stake in it. And Judge and I looked and said, you lose anybody in World War II? No, neither on my side of the family. So the fact of the matter is that when Russia suffered 27 million casualties, and then on top of that, China, at least 20 million, Russia and China together suffered probably 70 to 75% of the total deaths in World War II. Whereas in the United States, the war in the Pacific, we only lost 110,000 Marines, sailors, Army, Air Corps, in the entirety of that war in the Pacific. That was, 2 months of death at Stalingrad in one battle. The same in Europe, 189,000. So at the end of World War II, here comes Russia emerging with this gaping wound that was torn into its heart. And out of that, it left a legacy where there was not a hunger and thirst for additional war. Whereas we saw in the United States just the opposite. That's why they scooped up all the German intelligence officers. And we always portrayed it that, the Soviets were built hell-bent on world domination. We failed to look at it from the Soviet or the Russian perspective that here is the West, who we thought was our ally, are now embracing and protecting these same Nazis,
Right.
who killed 27 million of us.
Right.
So there is that gap in understanding, and we've seen it actually recently with Donald Trump. He pretended that we, the United States, won World War II, and that Russia, Soviets were only some sort of bit player. And the same with China. What they don't understand is the Russian people fought 75% of the German army, the Wehrmacht. The Japanese kept 70% of the Japanese were tied down in China in land, so the United States only fought really 30% of the Japanese in the Pacific. And it's that failure to understand and appreciate how those events shaped the people of Russia. Because when you have the march every year with the people carrying the photographs of their loved ones, of their family members who died or who were in there, we have nothing comparable in the West.
The West, first of all, I agree with everything Larry said. The West is also very ignorant, largely, of what Larry said. If you ask American school children, ask American adults, ask Americans of our age, they don't realize the level of suffering that the Russian people went through. They also don't realize that the Russians won World War II. The Russians defeated the Wehrmacht, not the American army, because of this attitude of American hegemony, which is provoked by the elites in America. We have members of the United States Congress who want nothing more than continued perpetual war. They think that they can use the support of the illegitimate regime in Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia, because that keeps them relevant, it keeps the government strong, it enriches the military-industrial complex. But in order to do that, they have to hide the truth. And they hide the truth by suppressing it on mainstream media. They cannot suppress the alternative media. So far, they can't suppress the alternative media. But this ignorance has pervaded even to the White House. Even President Trump, whose heart is in the right place, often says things that are anti-historical because they fit the narrative of the neocons who have been whispering into his ear before he goes in front of the cameras. That's why the conversation we had earlier today with Maria Zakharova was as important as I believe it to be. She has a profound understanding of the American public, a profound understanding of what they know and what they don't know. She's a serious and deep thinker. The American public needs to be exposed to that. The Russian government needs to do a better job of realizing the beauty and the history and the culture of Russia in America.
Смотрите, коллеги, здесь я понимаю, о чем вы говорите, это очень важно.
I understand what you speak about, colleagues, and I understand it's very important for our listeners to hear that. But
То, о чем вы говорите, это
what
ведь
you say about
эмоциональная
that's
память.
more or less emotional memory, not intellectual memory.
Это незнание фактов.
That's not knowing the facts. That's the feelings that you went through. Larry said that correct. When you go through every family with a loss in World War II, and when we have the parade questions, they die 200,000, 500,000. That parade cannot be stopped. And this is emotional memory. You cannot pass it. It would be necessary for Americans to watch the movies about war that are made in Russia. Americans, when they do these memories, they talk about the intellectual memory, but our memories that were done during the Soviet time and during the war now that they make, it's hard to pass that emotional feeling. But there has to be a desire. For example, if we live in the ideal future, in American school books, they say the truth about World War II, who won it, with the participation of the Soviet Union, the number of casualties, Stalin and Zhukov's role, all that in the books, it's not going to change the situation. Co-feeling, co-relativeness, you have given the right, it's not enough to know. You have to feel it, understand that. So I don't exclude the fact that due to the American movies and actually Hollywood investment, that the middle age of Russian people, I don't want to hurt you anymore, but they understand and realize about the civil war in the United States more than America.
Oh, you do not hurt us by saying that. That's more likely than not to be the truth, because of the elites in America only want us to know what they want us to know. Alternative media is changing that, but that's not going to happen overnight. You talk about emotional truth. Emotional truth is very, very important. My father was injured in World War II. He obviously wasn't killed, or I wouldn't be here, since I was born well after the war. But Larry's right. The American people did not suffer anywhere near the way the Russian people did. The last time the United States was truly invaded was 1776, when the British soldiers came over. I'm obviously putting aside December 7th, 1941, and I'm putting aside 9/11, because neither was followed with an invasion of the mainland. So the American people do not have that collective memory or that collective spirit of sacrifice. Collective sacrifice, not individual sacrifice. what Americans call, Larry likes sports terminology, teamwork. Is exemplified in Russia. It's not exemplified in the United States. This is not going to change overnight, Alexander. It may change.
Что будем делать?
So what are we going to do?
Well, okay, so I have some suggestions, because let's go back to the Hollywood picture. The movie Patton was enormously successful and really has played a major influence in shaping the attitudes and beliefs of Americans about World War II. And it's only at the end of that movie where there's the scene of Patton drinking with fat, drunk Russian generals. So immediately it's the Russians are portrayed in not a very good light. And Patton's talking about we ought to get with the Nazis and continue to invade. One thing that I think Russian filmmakers should actually try to make an English language film about the support that the United States provided to Russia early on in that war through the Lend-Lease and such. But then also, yeah.
We do have movies like that.
But they're not in English.
Right. But these are great suggestions. I prefer to read books, but the mass number of people who we want to read,
They can't translate those movies and provide them.
The mass number of people that we want to reach are profoundly influenced by movies the way they were. And this scene is terrible, but Larry has portrayed it accurately, the way they were in this movie. The other answer to this question is one word: Trump. Because Trump wants, as we talked about in the conversation with Maria, the grand reset economically, commercially, academically, culturally, socially. When all the sanctions are gone, when I can fly directly from New York to Moscow and not have to go through Dubai or Istanbul, just as an example, there will be many more cultural exchanges, a far better understanding on the part of Americans of the Russian experience and the Russian history. But again, that is not going to change overnight. That's going to take a few generations. We'll be gone before that experience is fully understood by the American public.
Well, and then, let's take the Holocaust as another example. The way American film presents the Holocaust is it was largely the Americans and the Brits who rescued the Jews. The fact of the matter is, the 6 major death camps, the extermination centers that were in Poland, where you had Auschwitz, Birkenau, Belzec, Chełmno, Majdanek, Sobibor, Treblinka. Who liberated all those?
The Russians.
The Russians. The West didn't liberate a single one, and those 6 death camps accounted for about 65% of all the Jews that perished in World War II. So that's why, again, this is from a standpoint of getting that message out there, and maybe that would be reproduced as a mini-series, but to show, because remember, the Stalin and they tried to inform the West about what was going on, and the West wouldn't believe it. The West refused. Roosevelt, Churchill, no, this is an exaggeration. And yet, it was the Russians who were leading the way in stopping that carnage and putting an end to it. So, those are ways which I think to create English language product out of, with Russian directors, because you've got many creative and talented Russian. I'm not even sure in Russian film if they've actually covered that, the liberation of the death camps.
Maria indicated to us she was surprised the government.
Excuse me, Judge. On a note, but there will be people who would stand strongly against those movies. And these are your lies. You think they like those French people today who would find out the truth that who was taking over protecting Reichstag?
Yeah.
That was French division of SS.
Yeah.
They won't like it.
Well, they need to know but they need to know the truth, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, the truth.
The truth is what liberates one's thinking as well as one's as well as one's body.
А это политика.
Well, and
That's
the
already politics.
and the
Yes.
same with actually movies that need to be made about, what happened in the Donbass, because
Yes.
the attack.
Well, you know this better than anybody.
Yeah, I mean you've lived it and suffered it, but the attack that took place with these Ukrainian neo-Nazis who were aided, funded, abetted by the West. The average American does not know that story. They do not know the story. And the best way to tell that story is in a movie.
And the evils of MI6 and CIA are largely unknown to Americans. This man is very much the exception rather than the rule for people who worked in Langley, the location in Virginia where CIA headquarters is. So, once the sanctions are gone, and people like you and Maria and others can freely explain these things to America, it'll begin those baby steps towards a level of understanding. It will be wonderful if the American people have the level of understanding of Russian history, culture, and society today that we do. We have it because of alternative media, because people like you have invited us here, because people like you have interacted with us. But we're just two people. Maybe there's 30, 40, or 50 in our category. We have to influence a few 100 million people. It's not going to happen overnight.
Но опять же, возвращаясь к политике.
Yes, getting back to politics.
Сопротивление
To stand against
и противодействие тому, чтобы,
of what
так русский и американский народ начали нормально разговаривать.
for Russian people, the resistance to get against the resistance that Russians and Americans get together, that will take place in U.S. And the worst place would be
Потому
Europe.
что
Yes.
я сомневаюсь, что
Because I doubt that American school books, some of them I do know, but probably the others have the same thing. It is written that
какой континент
what continent
является родиной таких понятий,
is the
как
motherland of
колониализм,
colonialism,
расизм,
racism,
нацизм,
nazism,
самых страшных
of the
идеологий,
worst ideologies.
у них одна родина.
They have the same
Они
motherland,
все из Европы.
Yeah.
all from Europe.
И в этом смысле, как бы,
And in that
поскольку,
matter,
первые переселенцы
the first
сбежали из той
people,
Европы,
the pioneers, they left at Europe to the New World, to America, to North
вы как
America.
бы не несете эту
And
вину на
you
себе.
don't carry that guilt.
Мы от них ушли,
We
они
left
такие.
them, we ran away.
Но для того,
But
чтобы даже эти культурные
for
обмены
these
начались,
culture
надо сначала
experiences,
сегодня
exchanges to start, we have to today
поставить на место Европу.
put Europe on its
Это
position
сегодня,
back.
поджигатели
That's
войны,
today they put the oil on the fire.
Они хотят, вот
They
искреннее
want that.
желание Европы
Truly,
заключается в том, чтобы
they
мы с вами
want
воевали,
us to
не они,
fight,
а
not
мы с
them.
вами. Вот чего они
America and Russia
хотят.
to fight. That's
So
exactly what they want.
this is another question, the answer to which is Trump. Trump understands, I believe, the harm that the European elites have visited on Russia and on the culture of the United States. Trump should pull the United States out of NATO. NATO is obsolescent. It shouldn't exist anymore. He's the only president that might do that. That'll bring about a profound change in thinking.
Да.
Yes, that's true.
Но вот я хотел еще и с Марией Захаровой
Also, I
эту
wanted to
тему
discuss that with Maria
обсудить,
Zakharova.
начиная с Трампа.
Starting from Trump,
Это, знаете,
it's
немного о хорошем.
a little bit about the good news.
У нас ведь, я знаю, что вы согласны с тем, что
I
у
know
нас
that
сейчас
you agree with me
по факту есть три
that we have
супердержавы.
3 superpowers:
Есть США, Китай и Россия.
United States, China, and Russia.
И у нас уникальный
We have
исторический
unique
шанс.
historical
Правда,
chance,
уникальный
truly
исторический
historical and truly
Во
unique.
главе всех трех
At the head of
сверхдержав,
all
то есть
superpowers,
и Путин,
both
и
Putin, Xi
и
Jinping,
Трамп,
and Mr. Trump,
они категорически против
they
войны.
are strongly against the
Они не
war.
хотят
They
воевать.
don't want war.
Yeah.
Right.
Они всегда есть какой-нибудь один
There's
сумасшедший
one
милитарист,
crazy
который
militarist that
хочет
wants
все трое
that war. All
против
3
войны.
of them
Но
are
это же
against war,
уникальный
but
шанс
this is a
договориться.
unique chance to have a contract, to have an
Yes,
agreement.
yes. Trump's idea, I believe, from speaking to people around him, of a grand reset involves China. I was hoping that on the May 8th celebration in Moscow, that Trump would pop up between President Putin and President Xi. It didn't happen. But this type of a meeting, a grand reset, forget about the tariffs, forget about the sanctions, let people interact the way they want. This will change the world. It's never happened under Joe Biden. It got infinitely worse. Because Trump is such an outside-the-box thinker, it could happen in the next 3 years of his presidency.
Now, the problem is, if you look at the think tanks, and one of the most famous ones is Rand Corporation, their entire orientation is, how do we split Russia from China?
Right.
And how do we then use Russia as a tool for attacking China?
Yes.
And the point I keep trying to make repeatedly is that there has been a fundamental change in the relationship between Russia and China, that they are now partners in a way that they've never been in history. Well, we can go back. Again, in World War II, what most people don't know is then Soviets were supplying the Chinese with military equipment and resources and training to fight against the Japanese. So this relationship, it does go back more than 80 years. But what we're seeing right now is with this integration, political, military, economic integration between Russia and China, it is forging it's something new we really haven't seen in the world before, because both Russia and China come at it from the approach of not trying to dominate, control other countries. Instead, to create, as China has, over the, when you look, as dramatic as the transformation in Russia has been from, say, 1995 to today, 30 years later, what China has experienced in that 30 years is even more phenomenal, more remarkable, because they're, quote, a communist country, and yet they've raised the living standards. They've created a solid middle class of people who now have money, they can travel and do tourist things inside China and overseas. The most modern cities in terms of robotics, factories that are off the charts, and yet we don't see, or I haven't seen yet, either the desire or expression by either Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping that we're going to go out and conquer these other nations, that we're going to subjugate them. Instead, they're offering a new vision. We want to raise everybody up. Let's all be wealthy. Let's all share in the success.
The American ethos post-World War II was hegemony.
Right.
American hegemony. We will spread our version of government to other countries. It failed. They didn't spread democracy, they spread violence and death. Trump is, again, not in favor of that kind of hegemony. No. Trump wants, it's an awful phrase, America first, but what is meant by that is to leave the rest of the world alone. That would be a remarkable transformation in American governmental policy. I can think of very few senators that agree.
Yeah.
One from South Carolina who would be apoplectic if he heard us saying this. Not even worth mentioning his name. But this guy gets to whisper into Trump's ear every morning.
Yeah, it's like, when you were growing up, your mother would tell you if you were bothering someone, keep your hands to yourself. No, don't be out there hitting somebody else and bothering them. Those rules which are good for children, I think still actually apply to countries as well. Just mind your own business, take care of your own, feed your own, make sure they have health care, without going out and meddling in the affairs of other countries.
Unfortunately, those strength methods, they're the simplest one. That's why people go for them.
Yes.
As a person, no problem, right? As what's that connected a multi-month unregulated situation in Ukraine? Trump said it right away.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what's the Gordian knot. You take the sword and boom, you smash it. And Putin said, no, we need to
Untie it.
Untie it.
Right.
We cannot cut it because it would be left in the lives of people. But the problem will still exist. We need to untie it.
Right.
It is a long story. It's a complicated story. It's easy to take a sword, throw a bomb, but that's it, no problem. What you're speaking about Russia now, but China truly is. We will discuss it separately, more into detail, but in a new polycentrical, multipolar world, as we say it, that is exactly the leaders of these two countries, superpowers, Russia and China, they offer a new philosophy. Not how it was.
Right.
Not how it was. But they offer such a cooperation where everybody wins. Not somebody wins everything, but everybody wins their own. That's a different philosophy.
Right.
Remember that famous one-liner, right? That famous one-liner from JFK, President John F. Kennedy. A rising tide lifts all boats. Economic prosperity produces personal freedom. It benefits everybody except the warmongers, the neocons, and the haters. They must be isolated, shunted, so that they are a minority and they don't run the government. I know, you're laughing. It's easier said than done. We agree on all of this. I never met you before today, and I love you. We agree on all this.
Знаете, к сожалению, вообще в политике и на самом высоком уровне
politics and on the highest level, its true motives are not the intellect, not the rationalism. I was speaking about rationalism today, but the, true values like, greed, when you're high-minded, fear. And that touches leaders, especially in our time, because it's 100 years ago we didn't have the TV.
Right.
We didn't see that, and I always see that. But how do we push it out? People are alive, people do things, maybe we create some institutes, some kind of saving instruments that those high-minded, self-loving, greedy, fearful people. That's a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
That's a catastrophe.
Любой президент, ваш президент, наш президент,
any president, your president, our president, Chinese leader, they're also people.
Yes.
Well, and we also have a tendency to personalize. It's about, we got to change Putin or we have to change Xi. And these are large, complex societies. It's, you've written extensively about Vladimir Putin, and really in looking back at his life, when when he was put in the position as prime minister back in August of 1999, I think it was like August 9th to be precise. He was only 43 years old. He was a relatively young man. Didn't have a lot, he'd been a lawyer, he'd served as an intelligence officer in the special services, but that didn't give him any magic powers. And he was basically giving, let's call it a steaming pile of horse manure, and he was asked to make a cake out of it. And, and somehow he did.
Yes.
Now, I don't believe that he did that on his own, but he did provide the kind of leadership that attracted and brought together the other resources that are inherent in Russian society, and that was, maybe he had a unique ability to rally the people and to invest them with hope. But, here we are 26 years later, and it has been a complete transformation of the society.
Well,
he deserves some credit for that.
Well, he deserves a lot of credit. He used free market principles, freedom of the ability to trade, to innovate, to create, to engage in voluntary commercial activities, which didn't exist under communist rule. It doesn't even exist in parts of America because the regulations are so heavy and so costly. And those have caused Look at these young people here. Their lives are so much better than their predecessors because of the commercial freedoms and other freedoms that have flourished under the presidency of President Putin. I'm not saying that because we're your guests. I'm saying it because it's a truthful observation.
Well, you're the one that's written the book. You tell us, what was it about Putin that made Putin special?
Appraisal and how he was grown and the personal experience. As I talk about it in the beginning of my book, the experience of working in KGB, some things they were taught there. What in the civil institutes they didn't teach. That's his experience in the 90s. That's his personal emotions, the catastrophe that happened to USSR. Including his personal radical experience that he spoke in Dresden, you know, when one with a gun, another one crazy running, you know, it doesn't leave you, it stays with you in your memory forever. And when Mr. Putin became a president, your president, he is in the same position today. And Putin was then. He had to take fundamental measures and decisions by himself. Nobody could help him, coming out of his own life experience. He was in the center of the system, political system, just like your president. Around him, he had to determine who is a friend and who is the enemy. And that's important.
Yes.
His enemy, but the enemy of the country.
Yes.
Right.
And then the enemies of the country, they had to fight. But he had to have an agreement not just with friends, but also with enemies. It's not his personal enemies, but the enemies of all. He was able to have deals and agreements with friends and enemies, system of balances, you know, he still works. He became the prime minister, Dmitry Medvedev was the president, but you know, the system still kept. They had a lot of challenges. 0808, and that 2008 year, then they had a Crimean Spring, Russian Spring, but the system still was stable. That's another thing what we can say is a talent, is a gift. But you have a gifted and talented president also. You have to put the right and real goals and not to make personal enemies as the enemies of your country. And you cannot make that mistake. You cannot do the vendetta.
Look, when they meet in Budapest, in my opinion, they're going to talk about a lot more things than the special military operation, because this is foremost in Trump's mind, the grand reset. Not because it will make Trump look good or Putin look good, but because it will be fantastic for 500 million people, the Russian people and the American people. This will be the beginning of a lot of these baby steps. Can we take a break soon?
I think so. We will continue to speak about the meetings in Budapest.
Yeah.
Could be an historical meeting.
Yes.
If we're all blessed and lucky. I know the skeptical.
No, I don't think it's skeptical. Trump needs a victory. He needs to walk away with something tangible. It may not be the conclusion of the special military operation, but it may be the end of the sanctions, the beginning of cultural and commercial exchanges. There will be great rejoicing in America when this happens, and it could happen as soon as next week.
Judge, Mr. Putin is very experienced.
Yes. Yes. President Putin has a far better understanding of the American situation and the American president than President Trump has of the Russians and President Putin. That's a given.
Thank you, colleagues, very much for the conversation and dialogue. I do hope that our audience have heard and it was interesting for them. Judge, have a good way back home. And Larry, I'll say goodbye to you. Ahead, we have a whole week with you, a week with the Larry Johnson International People's Unity Club. Yes, and we'll meet again here.
I thank the Unity Club for your generosity and hospitality. I hope we can see each other at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum.
А может быть, когда-нибудь и в Америке?
Maybe in U.S. someday.
Ah, that would be
better.
wonderful.
Even better.
That would be a great triumph. You'll be my guest in New York City. We'll even make Larry come up from Florida.
Договорились. Договорились. До свидания.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, dear friend. Thank you.
Thank you.